Hello, I'm Bailey Leisure, and I'm going to talk about the 2017 regular season, give my wild card predictions. This past weekend, the NFL regular season finally wrapped up. Basically, all the seedings and who's going to be making the playoffs have been determined, and there was a lot of news coming out of the NFL. One of the big stories for a non-playoff team, but the Cleveland Browns went 0-16, becoming the first team since the 2008 Detroit Lions to have an 0-16 season, and just another bad bad mark on the Cleveland Browns franchise, and probably the worst moment to happen to them since them moving back to Cleveland back in 1999. So I just or their franchise coming back to Cleveland as it was an expansion franchise, but just it was just not really great for them, and just they were. I mean, it was bad. But yeah, there was other before I talk about the playoff teams. There was a lot of coaching changes that were made. Um, One of the big stories coming out of Arizona, Bruce Arians retired after defeating the Seahawks, becoming the Cardinals beating the Seahawks, which or become the most winningest coach in Arizona Cardinals history. Got to say hats off to Bruce Arians for what he was able to do in Arizona, and kind of saw this coming. He had a lot of health issues in the offseason, so it's just going to be another question mark. And not only that, Carson Palmer announced his retirement a day after Bruce Arians. So the Cardinals, I don't know if Larry Fitzgerald will be next, but we'll see what there is with the Cardinals. They got a lot of question marks. Now, I've read in reports they've interviewed James Bettker, the current defensive coordinator for the Arizona Cardinals, Pat Shurmur, the offensive coordinator for the Vikings. From what I've seen, Matt Patricia, the defensive coordinator for the Patriots, is going to be interviewed. So there's going to be a lot of question marks for the Cardinals. But honestly, for the Cardinals, considering how injury-ridden it was this season, and them to go 8-8, somewhat of a decent season, considering I expected them to win after the David Johnson injury and the Carson Palmer thing to win like 6 games, to have a losing record and be 500. But yeah, other big stories, some coaching firings as far as I can remember. Chuck Pagano from the Colts, he's gone. Um, Jim Caldwell from the Detroit's gone. Shockingly, Marvin Lewis is staying in Cincinnati with the Bengals. So there's a lot of, just a lot of people from the reports. It looked like he was going to be done in Cincinnati, but that's not the case. And I looked at the reaction Bengals fans had; they were not happy. So, and better yet, but if you're as far as the Bengals are concerned, if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, you love the Cincinnati Bengals. It's the Buffalo Bills. Due to the Bengals winning in the last minute to beat the Ravens, the Buffalo Bills finally ended their 17-year season playoff drought. They were the only team in the NFL in this millennium to not make the play, to not make that had yet to make the playoffs. The last time they were in the playoffs with the controversial Music City Miracle game against the Tennessee Titans. Controversial. A lot of people called it the Doug Flutie curse, as Rob Johnson was started over Doug Flutie, who was in during that quarterback controversy. But the Bills have finally ended that drought. So the wild card game is coming, or wild card weekend is coming up. I'm going to give my prediction for that. In my NFL regular season predictions, I went 150 and 83, having 150 picks correct and 83 wrong. Pretty good for me. It's pretty decent. Almost 70 games over 500, if you can consider that a record. But so overall, my thoughts on the wild card weekend. Titans Chiefs. Titans overall, I think, are the weakest team in the AFC, or just in the playoff picture together. And Kansas City's won a couple games in a row. I think since they're at home, I'll give that to the Chiefs. What I think is the NFC, as it has been all season long, has just had a lot more competition, a lot more interesting matchups. And I think that the NFC wild cards side has a lot more interesting matchups overall. The first NFC matchup will be the Falcons and the Rams. You got the defending NFC champions and one of the surprise teams in the Rams. Falcons, they have playoff experience over the Rams personally, but I'm going to take the Rams because A, they're at home, and B that defense, led by Aaron Donald, I think is just going to overwhelm uh, the Falcons offense. And C, come on, Todd Gurley, man, he is, an MVP, one of the probable MVP candidates. And I just think that's going to be too much for the Falcons to handle, and I'm gonna pick the Rams. The In the second AFC matchup, you got the Bills and the Jaguars. I think the Bills I think they could potentially upset the Jaguars, but you know what? I think not knowing LaShawn McCoy is going to be a game time decision with that sprained ankle, and the fact that Jacksonville, um, with that defense, I think they have the best defense in the NFL going into the playoffs. They're the best team with the best defense on the defensive side. So not necessarily the best team overall, but they have the best defense in the playoffs coming into the playoffs. So I'm going to take the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. I think Panthers and Saints. This is another great matchup, and this is a close matchup. I see. Who knows if the Panthers, the fact that they've lost to the Saints twice this season, if they can, they've seen enough of them where, okay, now we can get over the hump and we can beat the Saints. But since this is at home, I like Drew Brees more than Cam Newton. I think the running game led by Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, I think it's just going to be too much for the Carolina Panthers. This is at home. I'm going to take the Saints. So that's it for my wild card predictions. I'm going to talk about, to end the video, I'm going to talk about my surprise teams and my most disappointing teams from the NFL this year. I'm going to start off with my surprising teams. The interesting statistic is that this season, and this is why the NFC is a lot more interesting than the AFC, is that out of the 5 of the 6 NFC teams in the playoffs, 5 of them were not in the playoffs last year. That includes, the Rams. Jared Goff, what a great year he's had after not a great rookie season, and the Rams are just, a surprise team in the NFC West. The New Orleans Saints, that running game really improved, and with Marshawn Lattimore on defense, it's really given the Saints. They've been one of the surprise teams. The Vikings, I did not expect it. You know what? I thought the Vikings would be, above 500, maybe 9-7. But Case Keenum, man, he came out of nowhere. Another one of these big backup quarterback stories. Could be the next Kurt Warner for all we know. And the Vikings, I think they're the team in the NFC that you don't want to play, in my opinion. And just, what they've been able to overcome, and the fact that the Vikings could really be the first team in NFL history to play in their own stadium, I think. I know that there was, I think the Rams played in Pasadena, and then I think the 49ers played in Stanford in the Super Bowl. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments, but this is just from history. But the Vikings could play in their own home stadium, so that's huge. But I think overall, the Vikings, I think would be decent for them and good for football if they were in the Super Bowl this year. But I have a feeling that they might come down to these big kick situations. And we've seen what happened in 1998 with Gary Anderson. We saw what happened to Blair Walsh a couple of years ago. But we'll see what happens there. But Case Keenum is playing very good right now. They have a good running game. They got great receivers in Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. Great, decent tight end in Kyle Rudolph. After losing Dalvin Cook, Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon have stepped it up. So we'll see what happens to the Vikings. The Eagles, another great surprise team that unfortunately I don't think is going to get far in the playoffs due to losing Carson Wentz. But Carson Wentz, he was having an incredible year, and had he be healthy, and that was the one downside to the NFL this season is all the injuries that have happened to big name players. It's just been unfortunate. But the Eagles a great year, and really something to build off, even if they don't get past the divisional round, which I don't think is going to be the case. So we'll see what happens there. And the final team is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I thought the Jacksonville Jaguars were going to be good last year, which was not the case, but that defense, man, historically good defense, and I really think if they can make a deep run in the playoffs, it's going to be because of that defense. They got a couple big defensive acquisitions in the offseason, including the former Cardinal Calais Campbell, and it's just it's been great for them. Leonard Fournette, great rookie running back, really helps that offense out. And I think Jacksonville, I think they're the biggest threat. If you ask me what are the biggest threats to the top AFC teams and the Patriots and the Steelers, I think for the Patriots, it's the Chiefs because they beat them in that Week 1 matchup, and I really think that they could go in and beat New England. For the Steelers, I think it's Jacksonville because these are teams that have gone in and beat them on the road. I think that's very possible that those two teams could upset them, especially Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville's the dark horse team, but it's really going to depend on how good Blake Bortles is going to be. Those last two games that they lost in the regular season, those weren't good. Blake Bortles was kind of up and down in those games, despite the previous couple of weeks he was playing really great. But we'll see what happens there. And I'm going to end the video talking about my most disappointing teams. The Raiders, I had them going to the Super Bowl. I really did. And nobody expected that to happen. I mean, that offense, just Derek Carr just kind of had an off year. Running game had an off year. Receivers, Amari Cooper didn't have a great year. It was just an off year, and it cost Jack Del Rio his coaching job. They're looking at John Gruden and what could potentially, I think, they are at least next year, and maybe the year after. The Raiders these could be it. This is probably going to be it for them in Oakland. So we'll see what happens there. The Ravens, they just fell apart. I mean, they came back down from 2 touchdowns. All they had to do was stop the Bengals at home, and they just couldn't do it. So that was disappointing. Dallas Cowboys. Ezekiel Elliott just, couldn't. That suspension really hurt the Cowboys. Dak Prescott had an off year. Des Bryant could potentially be gone. I mean, just not a great year for the Cowboys. The Seahawks, basically the issue with the Seahawks was defensively, big injuries cost them again. But secondly, offense, their inability to have a running game they have no running game. They have none. Ever since Marshawn Lynch left, they have had no running game, and that's what's going to put the Seahawks down, if you ask me. Not only that, Pete Carroll said that there's reports going around that, or there's potential that Cam Chancellor and Cliff Averill, big parts of that Seattle defense, they might never play again due to neck injuries. So we'll see what happens there. And finally, the New York Giants. Jeez, they were bad this year. They were terrible. I mean, Ben McAdoo was just not a great coach. Ending Eli Manning's, starting streak, it was just not great for the Giants, and just I don't know where they go after this season. I just really don't know. But yeah, that's pretty much it for my video. Thanks everybody for watching. Follow me on Twitter at BaileyLeisure96. In the links below, I got a couple links. My first link will be my recent GNR Central podcast appearance. I'll be making another one in a couple weeks. My 2 most recent videos, which I did film reviews on Star Wars The Last Jedi. I did an overall thoughts video, and I also did a spoiler review as well. And finally, if you guys want to see how wrong I was with my NFL predictions from earlier this season, so that will be in the description below. If you liked the video, click like. If you liked the content on my channel, please subscribe. And comment on what are your thoughts on the Wild Card Weekend. Do you disagree with me? Do you agree with me? What were your overall thoughts about the NFL season this year? So leave the comments below in the comments section. Thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you all later.